And this is actually an important part of our growing up. It's an important part of belonging. This idea that our way is the right way. It's actually kind of unifying, right? If we all do things the same way, if we all have a similar worldview regarding what is right and what is wrong, we're going to behave in a similar fashion. It also means that we're going to be able to behave in a way that is interpreted by other people correctly. So some of my behaviors, when I do them, you interpret them correctly because, or at least by correctly I mean the way I intended them to. You receive the message I intended to send because we have similar cultural backgrounds. So here's a fine example. When I was in China, well, there's a whole long funny story that goes there. We're not going to go into that story, but it was hilarious. And did end in a marriage proposal. But I kept using this because I speak zero Mandarin. I tried. Before I left, I mean, I do believe that when you go somewhere, you should try to speak the language of the people. But, you know, trying to pick up Mandarin on 2 months' notice was not exactly going to happen. And I had a couple of students who, at Norco who spoke Mandarin, and they tutored the heck out of me. But pretty much all I managed was, I'm sorry and thank you. That was it. And so when trying to imply that I thought what was happening was good or thank you in another way, I would do this, and everyone kept staring at me. Apparently this is very rude. Hand gestures are in fact not universal. During our discussion of language, I'm going to show you some hand gestures that we think of as being completely normal that are absolutely filthy in another context. Never use this anywhere else but here. This is okay here. This is an anatomical thing everywhere else. Most places it's your booty. You are implying your booty exit. So you wouldn't want to be like, that's great. Right, it's apparently quite rude. So this is some of how we get along culturally, is by understanding and receiving each other's symbols correctly. And we may not have the same experience when we're somewhere else. I love this one. I'm going to hit it right so you can see it a little better. So the goal of the anthropologist is to get beyond your own idea of what's right and wrong. So here in this comic, we have a woman on the left wearing a bikini, appropriate wear for places like Miami. I was in Miami this summer, and they were all so naked. I went to South Beach, and male and female alike, wearing white little, and I was like, this is nice. I felt like I was wearing a burqa because I was wearing pants and a shirt. My shoes were open-toed, but not as open as everyone else's. And both my husband and I were like, hey, this is cool, gotta go. Because we knew that in order to fit in, we'd have to strip down to bathing suits, and neither one of us was willing, as we had toured many Cracker Barrels along the way. I love Cracker Barrel. You guys know what Cracker Barrel is?
Oh, yeah.
They have food that would be illegal in California.
They fry their vegetables.
Oh, it's so good. It's the only place I've ever had spinach fried. It was wonderful. By the time we got to Miami, we were like, nope, not naked. Not gonna happen. Okay, so she says here, everything covered in her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. And her over here, nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. You see, both of them are interpreting it through their own cultural lens, through the way they see things, and coming to conclusions about what it means. right? That's the part of this. It's not just, I see that you are different, but what does that difference mean? And that can result in some very serious misunderstandings. And if you were the anthropologist going in and interpreting other people through your cultural lens, you sure would learn a lot about them. It would be the equivalent of having a psychologist that when you went to see them, they were like, hey, enough about you, let's talk about me. Why are we talking about you every day? You know, it's important that you understand what I think and feel about this. If we would fire that psychologist, we'd be like, that's the worst psychologist ever. Well, it's the same thing in anthropology. We have to be able to leave our cultural baggage at the door. Now, right now, that seems like something that could be very easily done. But when you realize how ingrained, how absolutely central to our being our cultural ways are, it becomes a lot harder. I'm going to give you an example that's really going to try you on this one. In fact, I'm going to give you two. So there are a couple of different groups that do this, but we'll focus on the mind game. Actually, no, let's do the Wa. We'll focus on the Wa. So the Wa, as a people, they're in Southeast Asia, and as a people, they have 6 genders. So wrap your head around that for a second. 6 genders. We have 2-ish. They have 6. And right now you're like, you can't even conceive of how that works, right? You're like, nope, nothing, right? You can reach for nothing because of the experiences that you've had. 6 genders is just out there. Okay, so the way I can describe it to you in a way that you might understand it is all children are born as what we would describe as girls, but there are girls with penises and girls without them. And you can actually begin to understand this if you start to think about our old people. Think about your grandmother and grandfather and old people. Do they still have the same genders they had? So yes. Not really, right? I mean, just for a second, imagine old people having sex. Right? Nope. No, bad no, right? And part of the reason we have such a problem with this is that we have stripped their maleness and their femaleness from them because of their age. And it also helps that physiologically they sort of start coming closer together too. Women will masculinize and men will feminize biologically as they get closer to the end cycles of life. So we sort of think of them as being not quite genderless, but not as wedded to the gender they had when they were younger. So for the law, all children are born in a state we would consider female. And there are females with penises and females without them. Women and men live separately in this culture. Women have individual houses. Each woman has a house for her and her children. And the men all live together in long houses that are called men's houses. So the men all bunk essentially in a dormitory together, and the women have their own separate houses. Most males will have multiple wives, and this is a fine way to handle multiple wives, because he visits each wife's house. In turn, no wife has to live with another wife. This works out. And they marry their enemies. That's how they keep peace between communities. Is they'll go into a warring community and they'll choose a wife from there. So they marry their enemies. Now, a child is raised with its mother until it's, I think, 7. It's 5 in one culture and 7 in the other. I forget which is which. Until it's 7. And little girls with penises are then moved to the men's house. But they're still considered girls. And the reason is they haven't become men yet. And because they marry their enemies, they see their wives as potentially dangerous. They're very dangerous for multiple reasons. We're actually, ladies, we're considered dangerous pretty much all over the place. And it usually comes down to one thing. It's a little shocking to them that we can bleed for 5 to 7 days without dying. Right? And menstrual blood is considered taboo and toxic in almost every culture, even in our own. In our own, we know, yes, girls go through a cycle, but we act like there's just all kinds of crazy taboos that go on with this. And guys, if I said to you, hey, would you go buy me some pads or tampons, you all go, no. You realize that's because you're afraid of the whole damn thing, right? And you're like, no, I won't do that. What do you think? Somebody thinks you're going to use them? Do you think as you're going through the checkout line, they're like, oh, that time of the month, oh, guy? No, they don't. In fact, actually, you should kind of think of it as a point of pride, because if you're buying condoms, you're hoping to get laid. That's a maybe. If you're buying tampons, you have a woman. It is clear you have already succeeded. You're maybe not getting laid right now, but you have a woman, and chances are very good for you in the future. So just stop freaking out about it. But so for the law, they believe that women are toxic with their menstrual blood, and that they cannot avoid getting it on them, and because they prepare food in the food, and so they see the women as poisoning the children through this entire time. By the most female of fluids, they are poisoning the children. So you take the little girls with penises who have been poisoned with femaleness this entire time, and that's why they are girls, is because they've been poisoned this whole time. You move them to the men's house, and you begin administering the antidote. Oh yeah, go with me here. So the antidote. If menstrual blood is the most female of fluids, what is the most male of fluids? Semen. And semen must be administered orally. Wait, no, it gets better. This cannot be done by your father, done by another relative, because only he can make that sacrifice for you. In their belief system, every ejaculate is part of your life. You are giving away part of your life. They're very, very sparing with the whole ejaculate thing, because they're literally, it's a little death each time, actually, for them. So if your uncle is a good man, once a month, for as long as you received the poison, you receive the antidote. Okay, now all of you are right now going, oh my God! All right, so from our cultural perspectives, we go, no, there's so many things wrong with this. It's institutionalized pedophilia, it's institutionalized homosexuality, right? And it's just not okay with us. But for them, it actually has a very different set of meanings. They do not see it as sex. It is not a sexual act. And all of you were like, no, that's a sexual act. Despite what President Clinton said, that's actual sex. Well, no. You have what would be considered sexual encounters all the time that you don't interpret that way. It's the same for them. Ladies, when we take our yearly trip to the doctor to have our oil checked, right, where they check under the hood, make sure everything's good, otherwise known as our pap smear, right? Any other circumstance where we had our legs in the air and someone's hand was up, we would consider that sexual. But under these circumstances, we don't, right? Under these circumstances, we're like, oh, that is doctor, right? That is not sexual. Guys, when they ask you to turn your head and cough, under any other circumstance, if a girl at a party did that to you, it's like reindeer games, whoa, who's right? Woo! She's naughty, that one, right? But if you did that at a doctor's office, you're like, hernia or no hernia? What's the story? Do I have one or don't I, right? That's it, that's all it would be. So that's the way they see it too. They see it entirely as medical. So as an anthropologist coming in, you have to actually be able to take that and put it aside and be like, okay, there's a reason for this. And it actually builds a bond between men and a sense of community, and it does all of those things. It's a culturally productive thing for them to do. Yeah. And by the way, the next question students always ask me is, do they have more instances of homosexuality than anybody else? And the answer is no. Actually, far fewer. That's not to say that this is something that, it's not that homosexuality is good or bad. It's just if we look at the institution, if you look at the numbers, the counts of how many, it's actually not very frequent. So, and since I harshed the men so hard, because ladies, you were like, that's just terrible for boys. Let me give you one for girls. There are cultures that believe very, very strongly that your internal labia, you have external labia and you have internal labia, your genitalia, your labia minora, that is bad and ugly. Also, your clitoris is a source of trouble. It actually, under their ideas, it grows unfettered. So if you leave it, it grows into a penis and blocks the vaginal opening. So in those cultures, they remove the clitoris and remove the interior labia, the labia minora. Then they sew you closed. You are only opened for sexual intercourse, and there's a small opening left for urine and menstrual blood to come out of that space. Now you may say, that sounds like the worst thing I could possibly imagine. And it's one of the few things that the discipline of anthropology has actually said. That's not okay. That is, they call it female genital mutilation, FGM. And some people argue that it should actually be female genital modification, because mutilation is a judgmental word. But anthropology is coming down pretty hard on it, calling it human rights abuse. But there are women, first of all, men don't do this to women, women do this to women. It is not your husband who says this must be done. It's your mother, it's your aunt, it's your grandma. It's not your husband. And probably the worst thing that happens to these women is that many of them die from infection. In some places in Sierra Leone, they're shipping their daughters to the US and having it done in a hospital, and then shipping them back to Sierra Leone so that their infection rates are much lower. And we have doctors here who will do it. They tend to be African doctors, but yes, we have doctors here who will do it. So, and we stand here with our ideals about what is right and wrong for a woman's body, and we say how silly that they would think that this is ugly, or that this grows unfettered, or that it would block a baby's exit. What nonsense is this? So why is it that when we have a newborn baby male in our culture, one of the ways that we greet it and bring it forth is to chop off a section of its penis? Why do we do that? Because it's unsanitary. Is it? Yeah, no, they think it's unsanitary. We chop off, we call it circumcision. We chop off a piece of the man. Hi, welcome to the world. Smack, here, let's do your APGARs. See how you're doing. Within 24 hours, we take a piece of your penis off. Hi! And we do this because we're like, oh, well, because without it, it's unattractive. Like a male who still has his foreskin. That's like snake in a sock. Why does he still have his turtleneck on? Right? And we kind of, there's something that's very strange about that. And we have in our head somewhere, oh, it's dirty. It's inherently dirty. There's something wrong with a man with a foreskin. So much so that there are adult males who voluntarily have their foreskin removed so that they will fit in. If their parents didn't do it for them because they came from a different culture or somewhere else, they'll have this done. Right. Now a lot of you are going, hey, I just got here and they cut my penis off. And you are going to be parents if you're not parents already. And as silly as you think, oh, the ideas for FGM are, the same justifications are used for cutting our children. It's still up to you what you decide to do, and admittedly, the two experiences do not compare. when you have your labia minora and your clitoris removed, you're like 13. And in some cases, it's two sharp rocks and a big woman holds you down. It's a little bit different than welcome to the world, and now they put this little collar over the boys' penises, like a little plastic ring, and then they put his little foreskin on it, and then they put a little rubber band on it, and then 3 days later it falls off. It's hardly an event anymore. When my son was born, and his father was like, this is what we will do because I am this way, and he will be this way, and that's how it's going to go. And I said, I'm not okay with this. Why are you doing this to our son? He's brand new, for crying out loud. Maybe we could let him decide that as an adult. And he was like, no, this is the way of my father, this is the way of me, this would be the way of him. And I was like, okay, well then you have to hold his hand. Because if this is a man-to-man ritual, then you will be there. You will not just let some nurse in a random room do this without you present. You will be there. And actually, as it happened, his father had come to see the baby. So when it was done for my son, his grandfather and his father and they all stood together, and it was a non-event. It was the rubber band thing. There was no crying, nothing. And it was like, I made a big deal out of it. And I was like, now you are a man within our culture. I'm anthropologist, and I was like, yes, you are now a man. Welcome to manhood and our culture. I'm sorry, but your world will be filled with pain. Or you came here as a man. If you came here as a woman, it would still be pain. It could be totally different. So I'm very sorry. And his dad, of course, looked at me like I had grown an extra head. So that's the idea. Ethnocentrism, our ways around it. Here's another one that we do that's really weird. If you look at it through the eyes of another culture, it's bizarre. So we take our babies, our brand new babies, that until yesterday were inside of us, and then we give them a room of their own and a bed. And we know that they can get out of this bed, sort of. We believe they can, even when they're little and they can't do anything. Newborn babies are like purses that poop. They don't do much. But we put them in this bed, and then we put a machine next to the bed so that we can listen for them. Some of the more advanced machines also watch them. And then we go into another room and go about our business. And then if the baby cries, well, we should let it cry itself out. It needs to learn how to be alone. What the hell? And then when we take it out into the world, we put it in these giant freaking strollers, right? These Mack trucks of a stroller. And if we've got multiple kids, we stack those Mack trucks into each other, right? So we put the kid way out here, away from us. We're back here with all the drink holders and the places to hold our bags, right? And here we go. So our kid is not physically touching us and experiencing a ton of the world without us actually being connected to the kid in any way, right? We may even like put the little hoodie thing down. Oh, you sleep now. Mommy's got to get Annie's pretzels, right? So we just keep pushing our kids around, not touching them. They sleep with us not touching them. And we think of this as normal. We think of co-sleeping, parents who sleep with their kids, as a little bit weird. Right? Why do these people do that? Are they poor? Because if you can afford to have a baby, of course the baby has a room. By the way, this comes to us straight from England, straight from the time of Victoria. Like, this is what the rich did, this is what we will do. There is a nursery and there are people who take care of them. We've substituted people who take care of them for baby mongers. We have higher incidences of SIDS than anywhere else besides England in the world. SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome. This is when your child just up and freaking dies for no reason. They stop breathing. We're still not sure why exactly. Some of my dissertation research was based on this, very thin. But why do kids stop breathing? Well, there's a myriad of reasons, and they may all contribute. But if you are a middle class or lower class kid born in the U.S., and especially if you're born premature, your chances are extraordinarily high of one of those kids dying. Very high. Now, this doesn't happen in Africa. Africa has no word for SIDS because there is no SIDS. Why is there no SIDS? If we lose 10,000 babies regularly a year to this, actually I think it's closer to 100,000 babies, but we lose a lot of babies to this. And we have all these programs, back to sleep, pack our kids sleep on his back, and all these other things that we do to keep our kids from dying of SIDS. And then you look at Africa and you look at Asia, none of their babies die of this. You might want to start asking yourself, why don't their babies die of this? Well, actually it turns out once the baby's out of the mom clip, baby goes on the mom. Baby is on mom all the time, except when baby's on dad, or baby's on sister, or baby's on mom's sister. Babies are not set down. You don't just go, oh, you stay in that great baby cage I bought for you at Target. Look at a crib. What is it? It's not even subtle. It's a cage. And that's what it's designed to do. Keep the baby in the bed while you're not watching the baby. Put the baby in baby jail so that you can go do some other things. And then, why is my baby dead? I don't know. You left it in baby jail. You left your baby in solitary. And then you come back and you're like, dead baby, how did this happen? No, keep your baby on you. I will give you a couple of exceptions though. Never, ever, 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 ever put your baby on the couch. Ever, ever, ever. I work for San Bernardino County Coroner's Office. I can't tell you how often babies die on couches. That happens all the time. So mom is right here, or uncle, or somebody's right here, and the baby's next to them. And the baby just rolls a little bit. It doesn't take very much, and just a little bit of their air gets obstructed, and they're breathing the same air. You can actually still see their face and their lips, and they will rebreathe the same air and die. Your baby also does not need all of those quilts and cushions and all the other shit in their crib. It's cute. Keep it in the crib when the baby's not in it. When the baby's in it, strip all that shit out and put the baby in the bed. Do not put all those cushions in. You had a question?
Is that why most women in different countries, when they have a kid, they have those bag type things around them?
All kinds of ways to strap your baby to you. And they're good. Strap your baby to you. You should probably have your baby to you as long as you can carry said baby. It's really good for the baby.
But isn't that another way of suffocating the baby with their heads here?
Your baby's not going to suffocate with it. If you, I mean, assuming you don't put the baby like.
Some cases do, like when the baby like turns their head, they do like stop breathing.
Yeah, you can take in those tie things. You can actually. I know it sounds awful, but you can kind of pin the baby's head the way you want the baby's head to be. You don't really, and that's okay. Okay, your baby doesn't need to jog, right? Your baby's not like now's the time I'll do the baby thing, right? That's not. It's not going to do that. And co-sleeping is actually a good idea in general anyway. Now, when I say co-sleeping, there are some rules. Co-sleeping is sleeping where your baby is. Having a bassinet next to your bed is the same thing as having the baby in your bed from a keeping your baby alive kind of thing. Your baby will slip into, there are stages of REM, right? You know, how you sleep. When you are a new mother, and weirdly, it seems to be only mothers, and only dads only do this if they're single dads. But if you're a new mother, you never hit stage 4 REM. It's part of the reason you're freaking exhausted. You never hit stage 4 REM if the baby is new. You never hit it. And there's a reason for it. Because when the baby falls asleep, all babies stop breathing. This is normal. All babies do this, especially around 2 months. There's a point when they're brand new, they can breathe and drink at the same time. Yeah, it's cool. You watch them. They never stop feeding to breathe because they can breathe and drink at the same time. And then there comes a point when their throats stop being able to do that, when their throats start to specialize. Their trachea will lengthen and they'll stop being able to breathe and drink at the same time. During that time, it's really physically exhausting and they tend to sleep deeper. When they sleep deeper, sleep apnea is super common. They'll stop breathing. All babies stop breathing. But most moms don't ever even notice because she's sleeping, the baby stops breathing, and she goes, and that starts the baby breathing again. That's it. So she never hits stage 4 REM, and she's always kind of listening, even if she's not consciously aware that she's listening. And she moves, the baby moves, everybody goes on as normal. Now, what if mama is impaired? Now, the ways mama can be impaired. Mama gets no other sleep without the baby. Mama has no time where there's a nap where there is no baby. Mama is sick, mama is drunk, mama's on drugs. All of these things. And on drugs could be because mama's sick, maybe mom has a cold. She'll slip into stage 4. she slips into stage 4, the baby stops breathing, there's no saving it. All done. So if you're sick, have someone come help you. There's no shame in having someone come help you. Have someone come help you. And that could be your spouse or your boyfriend or your aunt or whoever. Just have somebody else watch the baby while you actually conk the hell out for a little while. And then come back. And now all will be well again. This is what they do in other countries. In places where mom gets sick, mom passes the baby off to aunt. Or if she's already got a kid, passes it off to another kid. And then mom gets to be good and sick for a little while, and then she's fine again. They don't die of this elsewhere, and we consider this completely normal behavior. That's ethnocentric. All right, so this comparative approach is something that is part of in anthropology. It is what it is. We have to understand that cultures are diverse. Right? By diverse, we mean that they are different from each other. Anthropologists say that if you want to have a hypothesis about humans, you need to test it across multiple cultures. There are very few universals. All people do this. Very few. So when we take into consideration things like the amount of cultural diversity, what is right, what is wrong, and how arbitrary this is normalized varies from culture to culture. There's a few things where you can pretty much guarantee this is going to be the case. All cultures have a concept of murder, but not all cultures define murder the same way. Some of the things that we would call justifiable homicide, they would not call murder. Also, we have some of those. Like if I'm a soldier and I kill someone in battle, I didn't murder them, right? I didn't commit murder. Same thing for some cultures, but not for others. There's a place in Malaysia, the Semai, who are the non-violent people, and I mean they're really actually non-violent. They never hit their kids, they never hit each other, they never hit each other out of anger, nothing. So if someone hits someone else, then they call them Thai, even though Thailand is really far away, but they say they've become Thai. And if they become Thai, they have to leave. They can't stay there anymore. So they have no murder, but they know what it is. So that's very few, very, very few universals. All right, this is a turning point question.